Hi guys, again, I'm here again because I have finished my book on Malala Yousafzai. I bought it on Apple Books and it was about £7.99, and I have to say, it's a fabulous read. It really is. If you've ever, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a moderate Muslim. The fact is that there are unreasonable people and reasonable people. And reasonable people just don't really want to hurt other people to the extent of the Taliban, okay? Now, I think that Malala Yousafzai's book was an extraordinary well-written book, because she starts off with the dramatic event of her being shot, and then she kind of explains the progression of how it ended up in that situation where she's on the school bus and next minute she knows she gets shot in the head, and she explains all of the medical complications and how people had to pull together when it was really necessary. And it's amazing how just one person's story can tip the balance. And it's nice about girls' education because, if I'm honest, when I'm growing up in the country where I can just get educated, like I don't get the choice on whether I am educated. In fact, in England, we get fined if we aren't in school or if we aren't in a homeschool. So I found education to be a bit pointless when I was growing up. And I think that was partially down to my disability and partially down to me not really having that many aspirations. So I find Malala's background really, really good, but it does highlight the difference in personality, because I genuinely don't think that I have as strong a personality as Malala does. Because it's not like me and Malala don't have any similarities. When it comes to naming someone, in my background, it's really, really important to give someone an appropriate name. Like Malala, my parents were concerned about me being maligned, being discriminated against because I was a girl. So Malala got a really fabulous name that says a fighter, a warrior, someone that can lead. Well, my name, Alexandra, is another. It's reminiscent of King Alexander, but it's also reminiscent of a Catholic saint that fought for the truth and died for the truth. And protector of man is what the name actually means in Greek. Protector of the faith, she's known as. My patron saint Alexandra. I think it's called a patron saint. My saint's name, the saint that I'm named after. She died. She was beheaded because she converted to Catholicism and considered it as the true religion and the only religion. So her husband beheaded her. So I got a really good name, and my mum, when I was little and I was in year 3, and we all had this homework where we had to go home and ask our parents why we were named what we were named. And I was a bit disappointed because originally she didn't actually tell me why. She just said, "Well, I don't know, it's a nice name. I gave you it because it's a nice name." So I went to school saying, well, my mum didn't really have any other reasons apart from the fact that it sounded like a nice name. Whereas my mum actually, when I was older, said, well, that's not quite true, Alex. I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, I called you Alexandra because Alexandra can be shortened to Alex, so it could be male or female. And coupled with my last name, you can't tell whether I'm a girl or a boy. So when I went for employment, they wouldn't be able to tell whether I was a girl or a boy. And therefore I could possibly get the job without needing to be interviewed. Because my mum, she works in medical physics, and she was very much in favour, and still is in favour of education, because she came from a poorer background, and she felt that education, like Malala, was a route, it was an escape. It was an escape route out of a situation that she was in. And I think Malala sees it, and it is true, it is an escape route of sorts out of a situation where you're beholden to other people's wills. Your knowledge base is surrounded by the people who can read and write, and the people who can take charge because they've had an education that has led them to a specific social role, a job that's incredibly important for the getting on of the society. And that's why my mum named me Alexandra Charlotte Mackey, because you don't have to put your middle name down, and you could shorten it to Alex. So it's a unisex name, one of the unisex names. My dad didn't really get the choice, so my mum's quite headstrong. So in terms of that, me and Malala do have something in common, but my behaviour towards it was changed, and I think that's partially because I'm used to a place where girls can always get educated, so it's not a big thing for me. Whereas for my mum, I think she kept back her feelings of kind of women being discriminated against, because she didn't want to kind of imprint upon me her perception of society. She wanted me to come up with my own opinion, and I think that's like the downside of having a particular name, because it's like it gives you an aspiration, but it doesn't necessarily come to fruition. It's not necessarily something that should dictate the rest of your life, because it's really your opinions that should dictate the rest of your life. But I admire Malala Yousafzai's decision, her steadfastness in deciding that she's going to continue campaigning for girls' rights, for girls to be able to be educated. I think that's a fabulous thing. And I had to laugh inwardly at part of her speech. She was talking about how she didn't quite understand why people would take badly to the story behind her name, or at least why they were so silent in an audience full of British people. And I'm thinking, well, Malala, no offence, but Muslims to us mean Allahu Akbar and somebody gets hurt or killed. That's what Islam to us generally means. It tends to mean kill off the British Empire, and that can make people feel uncomfortable, because it's not just the Pashtuns that are patriotic. We do have a certain amount of patriotism to what we previously did, and at the moment we're feeling quite sore, at least I'm feeling quite sore, about the British Empire constantly being put into a barrage of you destroyed our culture, you destroyed our way of life, your British Empire was evil, nothing good came out of the British Empire. Just pure resentment and how we're owing everybody something. I think those kinds of feelings would have been going on in the backgrounds to their heads, even though they know what you're trying to say. Those emotions will be swirling around the back of the head. So it's quite refreshing to find a reasonable Muslim, one that isn't after our blood, which is nice, and can show gratitude. Although, interesting aspects about Pashtunwala, like we don't say thank you. I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm just being a bit ethnocentric here, but I do think that you do need to make exceptions on the thank you thing, right? Because there will come a time when you genuinely cannot give a favour back because you're incapable, and so you don't want to cause offence, but the whole point of thank you is because in our culture, at least my culture, saying thank you is a way of gratitude, because you should do something for nothing for somebody else, because there's a certain amount of pride, there's a certain amount of humility, and there's a certain amount of I don't know what to call it, correct behaviour. If you're going to do something for somebody else, you shouldn't expect anything back, because the whole point is that you're showing compassionate care to another person, and by saying thank you, you're just acknowledging that compassionate care. Because I think, to expect a favour back and not say thank you, or to just expect a favour back without a thank you, or when you can, you should help me. It's a nice idea, but the mentality for that isn't really here, because most people might just find it as an excuse to not say thank you and to not show gratitude. I get it, but I do think that the words thank you has a certain amount of value in people's perceptions of you. So I'm not saying, Malala, you must say thank you. I'm saying just that was an interesting aspect of Pashtunwala to me. And obviously you are going to have to read the book to understand how far this goes. So it does inspire me to feel differently about our capability to have an Islam that will get on with society, that will get on with everybody else, that won't deliberately cause problems and harm people. I think that was nice, and that was nice to be reassured of that. Call me Islamophobic if you like, but that is how I feel to a degree about Islam and forms of Islam, and that's coming from someone who's studied it at religious studies at university. I mean, we have such an issue with Islam here that when you do a religious studies degree, that module isn't even marked. That module doesn't even count towards your end degree. The module on Islam doesn't count, and that is because none of the Islamic scholars working with the tutor can actually agree on a way of teaching Islam that isn't offensive to other Islamic groups. It's a bit like Christianity way back when we used to blow people up in Ireland, and we used to have fights over simple things like the body and blood of Christ, and whether it's in memory of me or whether it actually changes into the body and blood of Christ. People actually died for that. Amazingly, people genuinely, there were saints on both sides, basically. And I rather suspect that Islam and every religion is like that. But again, it put hope into my heart that Islam could be a faith that is not hostile to people, and that is a really good message to send out. I know it's quite an old book, and it was in 2013, this attack, but I am so pleased that it came out in the way that it did. it did give me an ounce of pride, and I know that it's really selfish of me to think that it gave me an ounce of pride that they sent her, Malala, to the UK for our medical care. That gave me a real sense of pride in our NHS. You know, in our, maybe not in our NHS, but, you know, in, I don't know, Doctors Without Borders. That gave me a real sense of pride, because it's saying that we actually do good in the world, you know, and it's recognising that good within the book, within the text, that made me feel a little bit less underappreciated, a little bit less bullied. Because I do think that British, or at least English people, are being bullied to a degree. I'm not going to pass judgment on whether we deserve it or not, but it's nice to have that sense of pride that we were able to help. You know, we were lucky, we were capable, and we reached out and we helped, which is what I like. And it's nice to see that Pashtuns aren't so prideful. I'm not quite sure of the English verse. Aren't so prideful that they would forego good healthcare. It's nice to see that they weren't so self-absorbed that they would be too prideful and not humble themselves enough to take better care when they see that it could be better care. That was nice too. It was nice to know, because it kind of says, yeah, we can be reasonable. Because I think the thing about nationalism is that it can get very unreasonable. It can get unreasonable to vicious levels where you just think that everybody else is rubbish in comparison to you and your way of life, you know. And I think that's the danger with what was described to me as a child as nationalism. Because we're all forewarned these days about nationalism and levels of pride, and, you know, brought down a couple of pegs normally because of what our ancestors did to other people, which to a degree is a bit reasonable and a bit unreasonable. I think it's mostly unreasonable. Especially if you're third generation away from the problem. That's unreasonable. So I'm really wishing you luck, and I would suggest that you do read it. It is a really emotive, good read, and I'm glad that I read it over again, because it's not the first time I've read it, but it's a really good book. So have a good COVID lockdown of your own, and just cuddle up with a book in your pajamas.